Her name was Julie Francis. She was a rich, beautiful socialite from Tulsa. She got pregnant during the fall semester of her freshman year of college at Washington University in St. Louis, and then got sent to New Orleans, where I was born. She died long before I found out she was my mother. She had a short, tragic life. She was a severe alcoholic, married twice, divorced twice, died of cirrhosis when she was 47 years old. I was her only child. A lot of the people that I talked to in researching for the book, including her little brother, didn't know I existed until after she died.
How did they find out?
Her will that was discovered after she died said that she had given birth to a baby boy out of wedlock in New Orleans in July of 1957. And so when they found the will, that's when they learned that she'd had a child.
Did she give you up for adoption immediately?
I don't know. She signed the papers relinquishing legal rights to me when I was 8 days old. I don't know if she held me or fed me or anything before that. I found this fascinating Facebook page for alums from the Home for Unwed Mothers in New Orleans, where I was born, alums, mothers, and children. And reading the stories on there was just fascinating. And I don't really know Julie's story, but reading about these other women, most of them were allowed a few minutes with their babies. I don't know whether that was a wise policy or not, to give them any time versus no time. But another fascinating thing that I read was, typically the girls, and most of them were really too young to be women, would go back home shortly after their babies were born, and then the babies would remain there until they were placed for adoption. I was 2.5 months old when my parents drove to New Orleans and got me. A lot of the pregnant girls worked in the nursery, so they took care of the other girls' babies before they had their own, and then when they had their own, they were only given a few minutes with them.
How did your parents adopt you? Did they choose you?
They wanted a boy. They had adopted my sister, also from Methodist Home Hospital, 2 years earlier.
How was your childhood?
It was wonderful, idyllic. We didn't have a lot of money, but I certainly never worried about having food on the table. I told friends I grew up in a good place at a good time in Tupelo. Always knew I was adopted. Never would have looked for my birth mother. I sort of thought that would be ungrateful, maybe. I had wonderful, wonderful parents, and I thought if I go on some quest to find my biological mother or my biological parents, that might suggest to them that something was missing, and nothing was missing, and so I never did that and never would have. My father died in 2013, so he was still alive when I found out that Julie was my birth mother. He got the call, in fact, when they were looking for me. There was litigation in Oklahoma and Louisiana in an effort to figure out who baby boy Francis was. The reason there was litigation is because I was a potential heir to Julie's grandfather's fortune, and he was very rich. I'm not sure exactly how rich because I wound up not getting any of the money, but that was the reason that some lawyers embarked on an effort to find me, and the Louisiana Supreme Court ordered the adoption file to be released, and they had to go through the adoption files one at a time because they were, of course, not on the computer from 1957, and they were maintained in the name of the adoptive parents, and nobody knew who the adoptive parents were. So they went through them one at a time, and they found the file that was labeled Paul and Margaret Eason and looked in there, and there were 2 birth certificates, both for me, but one as Scott Francis, my initial name, which I didn't know until I was nearly 50, and then the replacement birth certificate as Paul Brooks Eason. Then the lawyers who were doing this called my daddy, who lived in the same house in Tupelo that they took me home to nearly 50 years earlier, and left him a message that they were conducting a nationwide search for Paul Eason, age 46, and my name is Paul Brooks Eason, and I was almost 47. And so he called me, and I called him back, and I learned the whole story over the course of the next few weeks.
And that in itself had to be stunning, but also to find out that you might inherit a lot of money and become a very rich man had to be stunning as well.
Yeah, and I was okay with that, too. And I would have been perfectly pleased with that. But